we can only.
Oh, hello, Craig.
I thought Craig should be here today because I'm excited about this.
Yep.
Okay.
That feels good.
Well, when
Yeah,
we're
like-
finding a new thing, like I don't know, this stuff is interesting, like the early stage stuff. I think at some point it's like useful to go back and look at where we started. So yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, where should we go? Where should we jump in? Like I'm conscious of my dwindling energy supply. So and I want to fiddle with all of this.
Do we want to use Figma? I think is one starting point. Like, is this or do you need to just talk things out at first?
I don't know.
Because we also have like Chirp City, and there's obviously like interface and technical backend infrastructure there, and then we had Honeycombs, which was a similar kind of run at this idea. So there's also like these predecessor ideas that have been moved along a little bit further than this instantiation of whatever this pattern is.
Yeah, like I think we warm it up, and then if we need to jump into Figma and start knocking stuff out, we do that. Unless you guys want to start, I mean, it would be nice to be in the same room sketching, but here we are. So we have that Buzzard block Figma doc already. There's a bunch of UI stuff in there. So that might be something we reference. Yeah. Gesund. Gesünden Oh yeah, I forgot about all this.
Yeah, there's a lot here.
Fuck.
How do you get it to open in Figma? Sorry, just real quick. I thought it was clicking on the F and then like open an app or something.
Mobile.
Are you doing this through?
I just clicked on the link and it's opening it in my browser, and I'm like, I don't want to see it in my browser. And it's telling me to get the app, and I'm like, I already have.
Hold on. Are you signed in Figma in your browser?
How would you know?
Well, I'm seeing kpexel as the viewer here, so I think so.
Okay.
Interesting.
And just go dump the URL into Chrome. Maybe it might be a Safari thing that's just capturing the click or whatever.
It might be signed into a different account on desktop too. I don't know if that matters.
Probably.
All right, I'll figure it out.
Okay.
Oh, your kpexel account was on cam view here, so I bumped it up to cam edit, and that might fix something. Same with you, Kevin.
Interesting.
Yeah, that did change it. Interesting.
Huh. Weird.
Instead of download the app, it now says open in desktop app.
Weird.
Yeah, so it's just in view mode because you don't need to edit it. You might as well just open in the browser. Otherwise, it's using Figma as a browser.
Sorry, I cut you off, CJ.
I think I was just looking back at the doc and I was like, wow, it's funny how we thought this was like very simple at the time, and now looking at it, I'm like, this is kind of complex.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Is it also interesting to look at, because this is the very beginning of understanding how building in blockchain works? Like, I'm curious about that too. If you're like weird, that's a weird way of thinking about it, but it would make sense that I thought about it that way.
I'd say like the core fundamentals feel pretty aligned, but like since then I think we've all come across patterns that make a lot of the stuff easier and just
Yeah.
like more efficient. But fundamentally, I think we like started out from a pretty darn good like sort of base
Interesting.
approach where it's very slim, pretty like I mean, the schema could be smaller, but it for something that was like going to go to the blockchain, it was like it feels kind of resonant with how you want to structure data that way.
Cool. I like the UI for all of the comments. I feel like that's new in Figma.
Yeah,
Yeah.
smoother.
Well, it's nice. Like I can see like in the amount of thought that you put into John specifically, like just this is how this feels to me. Like that's cool. I'm digging the UI and the feedback.
So
Yeah, this makes comments a little more fun. Go ahead.
I was not around for this whole brainstorm, so could I get like a
Yeah.
quick rundown of what's going on here?
Yeah, that's a good
Maybe a
starting
screen
point.
share.
Yeah, there's a couple things going on here too. A lot of the interface that you're seeing is from a prior app that Dave and I worked on called Ponder, which was getting at it was like a group journaling, group blogging tool. And then that sort of gets broken down and repurposed into potentially what was called honeycombs. Yeah, I don't know if it. Dave, do you have a sense of like how to give a tour of this document?
I'm like just trying to boot it up.
Yeah, me too.
The question is, do we just do a run on this and like, yeah, all right. So, yeah,
think,
from, go
let
ahead.
me, I think, let's see. There we go. So this screen, or this area, I feel like this compresses like what we were thinking for the honeycombs project. I don't know if that's a helpful starting place for Kevin.
Maybe.
I mean, I kind of
Yeah.
missed honeycomb as well.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I mean, this whole thing is honeycomb, basically,
Yeah.
is how it came out. So, I honestly don't really remember. Like,
Yeah.
I can start doing the narrative and then see if that warms us up.
Sure.
But yeah, CJ, you were going to say something.
I mean, I think maybe just like, I guess one piece of context for this is we were writing a lot of things on Buzzard.life prior to this thing. And I think in some part of this was like trying to solve the problems with us using like effectively something like Hugo to do like static site generation. I forget. I think we used 11T. But we were running into limitations all over the place, and essentially we're like, oh, we can do this all on the blockchain. Why not try? So this was like essentially our first attempt about like some kind of blogging platform on chain, but also trying to keep it pretty generic.
Yeah. Yeah, like trying to come up with some. I mean, this part of this is it's coming out of the like sort of. Is there a schema that like I think we're probably starting too on the nose. Like, let's make a relational schema, and like all the stuff can understand each other. And here is like like here's a project to try and like express some of what we were thinking about in there. But I think that part of this was also, we were trying to get this project to do 50 things. We were trying to warm up an understanding of what it's like building like stuff that is closer to chain. Like how does the front end and the how do contracts tie into this? Like how are things stored? What are like different architectures that make sense? And we had this need where we're trying to sort of create an informal writing place together that outputs like sort of blocks on the chain that are recomposable in some way. And then what can you do with those recomposable blocks? The basic game of the thing that like the user interface stuff I'm trying to poke into is like this sort of longer running informal group blogging, like, because I think that form wants to exist. I think that there's things that can be produced from that form and that style of communication. It's writing, where it is in the communication and writing spectrum. Like it is slower than chat. It is deeper than chat, but like maybe less deep than like an essay or a paper or something. But it can be potentially the like landing zone where a group of people, like a smaller group of people, could sort of share a mind space asynchronously, and then like pop out some thinking individually or together that might be publishable and shareable or something like this. And so this was just sort of a stab at this. And while we were in the process of this, it got a little bit heady and like sort of sluggish. Exquisite Land popped out of this. And then that was a lot more fun. So we moved all of our energy towards Exquisite Land and set this thing down. Yeah. And then as far as like the technical stuff, I don't know if you guys want to poke around, like sort of thinking on that side of things or whatever, or if that gives you a kind of understanding of where we're at, Kevin, or we were at in this thing anyway.
So if I were to replay that a little bit,
yeah,
it's kind of a blogging tool, but a kind of composable blogging tool in that like any piece of media called a block that is part of this, like it could be a paragraph, it could be an image, it could be like several paragraphs or something. All those are like composable in that I could start a new post that like pulls in or references those pieces in other posts, and my post like embeds them or includes them, and then there's essentially cross-linking in between all those things.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we were trying to figure out like a schema and like just an environment in which this would be a doable thing. Ultimately, and so I think the moving forward now, like the concept of a research log, conceptually that makes more sense to me for what this whole thing is, right? It's taking things from blogging and it's taking things from like journaling and these kinds of things, like sort of observing and sharing those observations. And then like reworking each other's. It's creating a context in which this is the social part of this thing. There is a social context in which there is a good faith environment to do these things, and then the design spec that I see is like these things should be easy to pop open in relationship to doing like some, like for instance, right now you're building Chirp City and you're using Twitter as like Twitter and Discord to sort of work with the garage door open on like all the things you're discovering and the frictions you're running into and all this kind of thing. And it's very hard to follow all of that because there's so much competition for attention and broadcast and these other things. So it's a different style of like media. And so the hope here is that there is an environment that like doing that kind of work, especially in a group, could hopefully like align people's thinking to get to insights a little bit quicker. And there is some level of tooling so that you can do the work of observation and I don't know, it's more scientific, I guess, but it's informal. It's lowercase science, I guess. Yeah, and it's a simple sort of system that people could build like sort of a lot more elaborations on. But yeah, anyways, that's the general feel. Is there a hyper simple instantiation of this thing that is easy to spin up and easy for like multiple people to come together, like and to start like writing in a similar like place, I guess, around ideas that are adjacent. So yeah.
Cool. I was looking also at Buzzard Life, having not really poked around a ton there. And I like popped into Shrews's page and see like, I don't know, 20 posts written on the same day. What's that about?
No, yeah.
We probably had some like random problems. Some of them probably were legitimately written on the same day, and some probably weren't.
Yeah, at least some of that
There's
came
like
from
10.
the fact that we played a game that like had 10 post submissions, and Shrews published them all at once. I mean, I imagine he wrote them on probably different days, but he probably pushed them all out on the same day. And then like whatever sort of processor that we're using, 11D, has like all sorts of semi-weird rules on how it like parses the created at, modified at time, the date and metadata. So yeah, the dates should not be trusted here.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
By the way, I love that Shrews's page has Dungeness Crabmaster.
There you go.
That's so fucking funny.
He's a crab master. Yeah, I think the what was it, in the markdown files you have the, what is it, front matter?
Front matter,
yeah. And we needed to specify dates in those, and yeah, this is the reason that you need a system that's like handling all this crap for you. Because when we were manually doing it, it just became a fucking clusterfuck. Because the protocol is all over the place. It just as a group environment, 11D is not really.
No, this is what it looks like internally, and it's
up to the task.
Hard.
It's a mess, and I think all of us had different ideas of structure and how things should be structured. So things just ended up like flying everywhere, and it was like unintelligible.
I love these notes, file names. That's so good.
So, like, this comes out of a place of like blogging, and obviously the tool you picked off the shelf is very, maybe like single author blog, not like highly collaborative. One direction you can take that is the rlog style thing. Another direction in my mind that I think has gone sort of mainstream is like Dropbox Paper, Notion, that sort of vibe, where it's a collaborative editor, and so you're sort of like synchronously working together on the same stuff. And I'm curious, like, where maybe that breaks down, or what's different about rlog, or what is that not solving?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I have so a little background here. Like I've used I think all of us have used these like shared composition surfaces, and they work for like sort of a variety of things. They work as a focused area to work a piece that is going to go out the door, right? And everybody can sort of talk about their frictions on this. My problem with generally these things is you need like a larger system to manage your exploration for things that you may not like. They are good for focused, like sort of synchronous work or a focused project. But like just dropping information in one of these documents over time with a bunch of different people working on it, I have not had like a decent experience with that. It is a directly shared canvas, which can be useful for certain types of thinking. the distinction that I'm trying to make here, or the distinction that I'm feeling into from a user experience standpoint, is you basically have your own feed within a shared like information environment. So like as you're doing your thinking, you can like sort of post in like a Tumblr or closer to Twitter style to your area. It is more like a blog in that sense. Like, here, get all this stuff out. I'm thinking about it or whatever. And then it is accessible to the rest of the group. And if you were to everyone to do this kind of thing on one, like say paper doc, it would become like unintelligible immediately because
Can I jump in real quick? So
Go
I
ahead.
think one of the ways of sort of distinguishing is temporally. What rlog gets at is something prior to getting into a group editing tool.
Yes.
So the group editing tool supposes that, or presupposes that you have a topic that you are writing about and it is agreed on. What we're interested in is how can a group of people arrive at that topic together? So it's
Yeah.
like a group practice of finding something that we couldn't find as individuals. So we're sort of pooling our, I don't know, intellectual energy and like our own lenses on the world to find something that's different than any one person could find.
Makes sense. There's another parallel I'm sort of reading into this, which is Figma as like the visual representation of this tool.
Exactly.
And rlog is kind of the written thing. Figma doesn't do good with text, but
No.
the like remix thing and like the immediacy of I can copy a very small component of a thing, or I can copy the entire canvas and duplicate it, remix, make tweaks. Then we can talk about what the differences are and decide like how we should hone in on the final end product.
Yep. Yeah, I think that there is probably a combination of these interfaces that is a couple steps down the road here. Like the writing aware infinite canvas is like a sort of a utopian vision, right? Like the stuff in Figma that you put on there like would have this relational understanding. Like the blocks would be related back to other things where you could navigate them. There's some browsing possibility there. The remixing is non-destructive, I guess. It's not just pixels. Effectively, they are contextually aware. But I think we're a few steps away from that, obviously.
Yeah, I think on the shared surface versus like independent streams, I think a shared surface presupposes that there's like some alignment up front, whereas having everybody like scooting off into different directions and then seeing where the overlaps happen and then easily being able to like transition into a sort of shared surface on like places that are already kind of ready for it, I think makes a lot of sense. And like I love being in shared spaces with people, especially like groups like this where we're all kind of like feeling the same thing. But I think I've also been in shared surfaces where you don't quite know what everybody else expects and you don't want to like step on each other's toes, and all of a sudden like there's like this with every person, it just gets harder and harder to actually put down like things on paper, and it kind of just like gunks everybody up. And yeah, trying to avoid that I think is pretty important.
Yep.
So another kind of expanding on this a little bit, I think all that makes sense as an exploratory kind of tool, like asynchronous tool. Do you think that there's room for like this may be like thinking too far ahead, but I think there's room for taking what is this sort of like research brainstorm body of work and tooling to kind of come together into a cohesive thought, basically like a cohesive collective thought. So what I'm kind of thinking of and modeling in my head with this a little bit is like there's been times where someone around me is writing a document of some sort, whether it's a letter to send to someone or whatever, and they want my sort of input on it. And where like Google Docs and stuff falls short, like there's ways to leave comments and ways to suggest edits and stuff. But honestly, what I would prefer is that like I could fork like these three paragraphs, I could do some tweaks, and then you can review like that in the context of the entire doc and decide like I want to pull this into the main branch, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. Two things. There's the yes, like I call that folding, sort of. Like once there is the general area of like exploration has been sort of put out there, and people are like sharing that mind space together. Like say you have 10 people or 5 people or something like this, and the like languaging is starting to develop, like reuse of terms or something like this. Like there's a general like sort of conversational aspect to this, and then you just start conversing in the idea together, right? But this is a process of sort of capturing and like finessing the raw material into like folding it over, condensing it, getting it legible to an outside audience. And that in that process, the tooling that you're talking about is absolutely necessary. So like, and yeah, I'm trying not to jump ahead to that stuff because that's where,
yeah, of course.
Like, so there is I think a publishing pipeline that this is the beginning of, and that publishing pipeline potentially ends up in a minted piece. Like this is where it moves into a form that is maybe like open for like larger dissemination, and then like componentized use, like out in a broader field, sort of public discourse kind of thing, which is why it's publishing. Yeah. So you're on the right track. What I'm saying.
To kind of tie it back to honeycombs, I think where that showed up is this idea that every block had a little checkbox next to it, and if it was checked, then it would go into this one singular post here called the post. If you're following on Figma, you just click on my name to see where my cursor is. But basically, this page right here, it was kind of like the pre-published draft, so you can reorder things. It cut down like from the stream effect here, so this is like maybe where you find the blocks that would be included, but then here is where you would like really work over the blocks and rearrange them and kind of edit them to where they felt right. And that was like before the publish event, so we never really got to the publish event, but like that's kind of where that was streaming to, is like some way of taking a lot of thoughts, kind of funneling them all into the same place. This would be the closest thing to a shared surface, and I think the lines could be blurred even more, where the individual little profiles would disappear over time, and it just became really like text, but that still had an awareness of like where it came from and how it changed. And then the publish event would like really cement everything and push it out into like the bigger world.
Yeah, I think that maybe we were trying to find a full loop as a reason to build this thing, and we may have been premature on that. I mean, the generalized concept is fine. Like, why are you doing this thing? You're trying to get it out the door.
Totally.
My felt sense on this now is that, so yeah, the second point I was going to make with that. So tooling to get raw thinking into a form that is shareable, right? What are the methodologies there? There is the technical need to like have this stuff be forkable and composable and all of these things, which makes this thing like feasible, right? From a technical standpoint, from a digital technical standpoint, the social technology side of this thing that I think is necessary for this environment to be the type of environment that people can come together and do this kind of thing. There's like some like layer of like prompts and games and like coordinating features where like somebody could spin up something and we can all, like, everybody in the group who decides to play a game over some period of time, or like, you know, can move the thinking forward in like a sort of engaging and fun way. And so there's this layer of the thing, and the minimum could be like, here's an article, let's all explore this thing together, you know, and or here's an area of thought, let's reflect separately and then come together and look at how we reflected. Is there more clarity there? You know, like there's a whole bunch of practices in here that I think that this, like, they could be modularly snapped in based on, it's like lensing, like what kinds of lenses can you use to work with your thinking as a group. And those things will probably look like group activities, games primarily. If it's fun to use, people will use it.
Games and prompts have always been a pretty big theme.
Yeah.
For Buzzard, it's like how we've looked at a lot of this, and it works because it's just like, it's just so much more, I think, maybe less ambiguous when there's like kind of a soft goal that's shared, but the game doesn't necessarily end, and there can always be like a next chapter of the game or a recontextualization of the game. Like it's just structured enough to where it like helps you orient, but it doesn't like really restrict creativity. I think it just like really actually lets it flourish.
Yeah, it's also it's leaning on the idea that we're in relationship with each other, and that there's a lot of energy that can be expressed when we can utilize like favors and like the kinds of things that people do with each other normally, just because they're living around each other. So like trying to bring forward that kind of like, hey, can you take a look at this for me? Or, you know, and then there is another step here that's a little bit further, that like there might be places to play with currencies and tokens and like, you know, sort of silly primitives that can help us build games to work with this stuff. And I think some of those things can probably turn into forms that can be sort of automated.
This is somewhat related, but also not. But a thing that I keep coming back to with some of this blockchain stuff and like anonymity and pseudonymity and all these things that are kind of spawning out of this new world is this notion of like trust and trust networks. And I'd be curious to explore that as an idea with you guys at some point.
Sure.
I think trust is a big piece of this too.
Yeah, totally.
Because, yeah, like there's like, we were talking a little bit about this, was it yesterday? I don't know when this, or maybe a couple days ago. I think it was Dave, CJ, and I, but I know, John, you've been part of these conversations too. I don't know, my brain's messed up right now. My memory is like weird, but the idea of concentric circles of trust, where there's like a center area like that sits with the self, like as an individual, and you have your own suite of practices that you're doing to understand your own thinking and your own expression, whatever form it is, but then zooming out a little bit to like a trusted, like really high trust, high vulnerability group where you can basically say anything and not like worry about what the response is going to be, but that you will get a response if that's what you're asking for. And then that zooms out a little bit bigger. So like that first smaller group where it's high trust, high vulnerability, I see that as like the equivalent of, in communication technology now, the group chat or maybe a Telegram group or something like that. But then zoom out a little bit further into, again, like a closed group, more like Discord server potentially, or bigger Telegram or bigger group chat, where you have, it's more of a moderate level of trust, a moderate like level of vulnerability, and then the one after that is going broadcast, and all of that is like sort of clarification, layers to getting your thinking out because you're working with something is like the assumption here. But I think it's directly related to trust because if you go out the gate to broadcast with something that is vulnerable, you can get chewed up and spit out. So you're not going to do that. You're going to go look for some place where there's people you trust. So this is interesting to me as well, and I think fits into what we're talking about. I think there's layers here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's another sort of side of the trust piece that I think like there are different components that could add up to this sort of like trust network, and you touched on some of it, but I think the byproduct of having some sort of quantifiable trust network living somewhere, maybe it's the sort of shape of a social graph, but maybe there's other like variables that play into it.
Yeah.
The outcome could be like this issue that a lot of people are having with trying to distribute NFT drops and stuff, where like bots come in or people come in and take way more than their fair share, and some sort of trust network to like not necessarily map one-to-one a wallet to a human, but a way to distinguish that like this person or this wallet or whatever has spent a lot of time building trust among all these groups of people, therefore we consider trusted to some degree. Maybe there's some like threshold there, and use that as an allow list sort of for certain activity.
Yeah, it reminds me of reputational token systems.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at, I think.
Yeah, and I think because one of the things that's hard about trust is that it is hard to quantify. It's hard to offload that, I think, into digital technology because computers, like the abstraction away from the core relational aspect of trust is, I don't know, it gets tricky somehow. But if you give people the tools to use digital technology where it's like, okay, you have access to these like in-universe tokens that you get to give people because it impacted you in a way that was positive, basically, that you're expressing, I trust this person, I'm going to give them 5 tokens because they read something of mine and gave me really good feedback and it was useful to me. I think there's something there where giving people the ability to act in a quantifiable way, but they're deciding themselves subjectively what makes sense. And then there's other ways to automate some of this at some in the cycle, but I'm not sure where, and if this maybe gets back to the layers where why in like a big broadcast system, something like likes in Twitter is okay at that point because you're getting it's a tokenized way of, it's not trust per se, it's more attentional, which, stop rambling, but I feel like this ties to what AAZ was talking about, getting away from attentional dynamics. Are we moving into, is it like a trust-based dynamic sort of environment, like a market in Web3, which is kind of cool about.
Yeah.
Yep.
The likes thing is interesting in that I feel like there's ways that can go that I think maybe are shown today that are pretty negative as far as like a reputation system or a scoring, but the
in an
rlog
attention-based economy. Yeah, so if you change the context of it, it's possible. I don't know, I haven't thought about this one very much, but that's where like just the automation of trust into something like simplistically quantifiable is challenging. But if you give people some what's the word I'm looking for, not autonomy, but agency to decide for them, like that this transaction was a one where I felt like we had established trust, or I felt comfortable, like whatever those sets of experiences are, and let the people spend their currency in that way, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, there's also something that like a inferring trust based on activity in a given context. So what I'm thinking about is like, rather than likes being a score of like, I'm giving you a thumbs up on this post, and therefore
Yep.
you get a point of trust or whatever it is.
Yep.
This like remix vibe of rlog and Figma and things where like if I am pulling in content of yours, that has
Yep.
some weight to it, and so I must trust you to
Yes.
some degree, or like admire your work or something.
Yep.
And the more that I kind of solidify some of the end products of that work, the more value I'm putting on the individual pieces that may or may not be from me or whatever. So
Yep.
I can like by proxy award trust to all these people because I've included
Yeah,
them.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think of like connecting to something else or establishing that point of relationship. There's like a built-in default award of some kind of currency, but then you always have the ability to tip on top of that. It's like going shopping, buying like
Totally.
a coffee, and you establish like I went to a coffee shop earlier and bought a coffee, and it was nice to talk to the person there. It was very like, I don't know, mundane conversation about weather, but I valued that highly, so I tipped him on top of just the base amount. So I like this concept of like tipping people. So like if you linked to someone's article or pulled from their piece because it gave you such a big insight, you're going to want to tip them on top of that because you're like, dude, thanks so much. Like you just helped open up this whole line of thinking for me. Like, here's a tip.
Totally.
Yeah. So this is where like designing currencies to like represent value and then creating ritual behavior like social norms around the
Yes.
distribution of these things. Like you're not it's not necessarily that there is a currency that you are exchanging, you are trading for like work done necessarily. That can also exist. But it is closer to totems or like maybe you offer like there's this is where the games and rituals and stuff can also come in. Like over some period of time there is some meeting of minds, and within this context there are totems that are exchanged, right, through the act of like participating in the system. But the currency is just reflecting a kind of thing that wishes to be done within the system. So like yeah, I don't know. I think that there are games to play here that, like you were saying, Kevin, the byproduct of the participation, the activities that are taking place, are a weighted measure that can be used to infer like reputation, at least within the local group, and then that can probably be like expanded outwards. Like, yeah, if there is a connection to the local group. And so once you become an actor out in the broader sphere of events, there is like some reputational cost to action within this larger sphere.
Mhm.
So yeah.
And I think like what you had mentioned, basically POAPs are kind of a little bit of that too.
Yeah.
It's like a measure of participation in a process, and so you have a history of participation. Therefore, you are trusted because you're proven there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's hard to
Yeah,
fake, hard to bot.
Yeah, and we're all, so the more that you can agree, everybody looks at this and is like, yeah, that happened. I mean, this is the general idea of like, like certifications and stuff like this is that, or in the case of like an apprenticeship or guild system, like there is some activity of being there and doing the thing, and then some group of people who have been there and done the thing agrees to say that like this person has been there and done the thing, right? The problem is when money comes into that and it becomes transactionalized, it becomes unsacred. Then you can just buy it, and if you can just buy it, then it's not worth it. So, so it is figuring out how these different money systems interact with like broader markets, because in a smaller system you can have like a communal holding of the favors, of the balances of relationship, but once you start moving into broader territory where trust is shakier because you don't have the depth of relationship, like agreed upon tokenization helps with the trade. This is the idea of permissionless, trustless, currencies as something that we can use as a large scale totem for exchange. But I think the rlog stuff is moving it back down into what are trusted environments and how do you build up trust? Because the blockchain stuff has given us trustless environments to a degree. Like we have a protocol that we agree on to trust that is sort of divorced or it is unnecessarily tied to individual action, right? Which is good. That is a primitive that affords us a lot. But now, how do you create trusted environments so that like you can build foundational understandings that require a level of vulnerability? So this is like the polar opposite end of those things, and they meet somewhere in the middle, I think. If that made any damn sense.
Followed it pretty well here.
Okay. That's something.
Yeah, we got into this a bit about if blockchain is natively or inherently public, how do you create spaces that are less public for this purpose of it because it's a trusted environment and not anyone can walk through? So technically, I think this is a weird. Yeah, I don't know how you achieve this technically because the nature of the blockchain is that it is public. So I guess this is the concept of whitelisted. You can't enter, but can you see it? Like, can you still go find it if you wanted to, or is it encrypted in a way? I don't know that it's necessary to really go down this road, but it's interesting to think about with blockchain.
Totally. I think that one pretty nice, fun metaphor we came up with was pre-chain, on-chain, like pre-draft.
Yes, that's right.
Or pre-publish, publish, where like things can be done in a style that can be moved onto blockchain very well.
Yeah.
But we're not straight committing like every single message to something that can be read by everybody. But I think like it's probably going to be like very much a gradient. And the questions of like it's a space I can't come in is different from I can't even find the space and therefore I have no chance of coming in is different from I can see the space and come in but I can't do anything. I think all of these are going to have like their own sort of parallels in terms of like blockchain based spaces for communication.
Yeah, I think the short term version of this, I've been grappling with this a little, and this is probably where we start getting into the nature of the tech and what it affords in its cheapest sense. So, like, what one of the design parameters for this thing is, or that I'm trying to operate under as a constraint, is low abstraction. Like, what is the minimum level of abstraction that this thing is workable in across all the spectrums? So like technical, like user experience, like social experience, all of these things. Like how much of a workbench is needed to create a workbench to create the form, right? Like in the sense that like like the place where like it's 10 lines of code or it's 30 lines of code or the contract is really simple, it's like three things. I think that those are good signs that the thing is a simple primitive that can be built on. So in the case that like if the thing is inherently like permissionless or public or whatever it is, like so here I've got like a little glimmer of the thing. Like the five of us come together and we make one of these things, right? Like assuming that it is in a form that is makeable, like with a button click or whatever the hell, right? And now a system has like a little bundle of like a little area on the internet that is tied to a URL that like is accessible by the five of us, right? And then there is a whitelist to write to this area, right? The people not on the whitelist can't write to it, and the people on the whitelist can. Like, are there natural? Is it obscured by the fact that no one knows about it? Like it's unindexed. It's it's you would have to know how to get there to get to it. That's effectively a camouflage, right? Okay, is that enough for now? That's fine, right? Like, do you need is the knowledge of that thing a type of working in public that it's fine, right? Like, or like, are there features of the technology that afford different types of relationships to like seen and not seen? Yeah, so I think this is part of the unpacking, like the nature of the thing as it stands, from a technical standpoint. Like, well, I need to understand a little bit of that better, but yeah,
I think security by obscurity is fine. Most
Yeah.
software does it now. Like you can share a link to a thing that is technically open to the internet, but you'd need the link
Yeah.
to get there. So
yeah. So in
That's
that
how the
case,
early internet works too.
Yep.
Quite
yeah, in
fun.
that case, we don't have to build some crazy encryption stuff.
exactly. The encryption stuff is there by you just don't tell the people you don't want to see it.
Yeah. I
That's
don't.
encryption.
I want to figure out encryption. I'm curious to play with that, but it
Yeah.
also sounds hard.
Well, this is another thing too. Like, if this system works and people can publish to it, which is, I think, the first, like, if we can have a place that is enjoyable to publish together to, like, to get our thinking out into an environment that feels nice, then it likely will feel nice to a bunch of other people. I would like, to sort of offer the system in an open way so that people can make their own versions of these. And if there is enough surface area on like this being a form that people can take up, then there is a modular approach to this. And security is one of those modules. Like, I think it's a pretty big one, or securitization or privacy or whatever the grouping of it. And there may be like a simple version of that thing that requires a large group of people sort of caring about it to find. And ideally, they could use an rlog to find it. And this is this is the fractal of the thing that I like, but who knows?
Yeah, I think with that like piece in particular, I'm just like, I have a bunch of resources that are pretty much like only in my head, and I would love to share them in order to like move the goal of security and that like security module forward. Because I've done a lot of research in this area over the years, like because I want something like this to exist more on like the distributed file system side, but it also plays in to the same thing here. Effectively, like a text is still a file no matter where it is. So there is definitely an aspect, and there are products out there that are quite obscure that do some of this like inherently, like how they exist already. And I think some of those techniques could probably translate over to the blockchain quite nicely for like even group kind of encryption and access and read write and all of this. And then it's just finding like good UI and UX on top of it,
which is what I'm interested in. I think, I mean, and I know I'm not alone on that. Like, there are a bunch of people who have been doing publishing and communication tooling that, like, nobody wants to make another fucking instant messenger or Slack clone or whatever the hell. There are these newer forms that if this material is more fun to work in, there are new things that we can, like, new areas of expression and relation to play with. And if the UI is holding it back, that's a fun problem. Yeah, the security stuff is cool.
Yeah, I think at least for me, I'm just like, oh, that's going to be like one of the most fun things. And like Kevin mentioned it too. And I think like it'll be challenging, but it'll be like very fun and very useful to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So should we get started?
Yep. Let's get into it.
The
That's
preamble
always
is
how it goes.
I mean, we're like, so this practice that we just did, where we're just sort of like, here's a bunch of shit. Like, what are you thinking about? How are you thinking about it? And then we find overlaps, and then we have shared language, and we generally know what we know. We are just, this system is like trying to do that in text or whatever media. text to start because it's the simplest, but like I have a bunch of sketches that I've done, and like I would love to put those in a stream so that people can sort of poke through them, and they may get something out of it, they may not. They're just glimmers of how I'm thinking about a thing. And if we can share all of our glimmers about how to, then we can get to a place where we can start, which is bringing in the tooling level that you talked about, Kevin. Like, how do you fold it into something that is now shareable more broadly? So yeah, anyway, yeah, fractals on fractals. Yeah, so what is the minimum expression of this thing, and how do we get there? Or maybe that's too much of a destination.
Well, I'm struggling with this one a little bit. I know, Dave, we talked about it a little bit the other day. Like, I don't know if there's like some like very, very like simple mock-up of UI that helps to understand like what is the minimal requirement, or like in what is the simplest form of the thing where it is easy for someone to spin up, or what does that look like? Even if it's like maybe not even that particularly useful itself, like what is the simplest form? Just to kind of play with the idea a little bit. And then I guess like what that helps for me is, I at least like looking at the Chirp City stuff, I'm like, okay, like I think these things can be like very, like it's coming from a very similar like technical understanding, I feel like. So I think just like seeing it will like help make sense of it very quickly.
Sure. Well, we can go through and sort of talk out features, and then maybe that'll get us closer. Like, yeah, this is where I want to sketch. Yeah, I need my notepad.
Someday Dave will have like a high def DSLR for streaming sketches. Like, be wonderful.
They all need it. Well, we'll just have our Apple glasses.
Yeah. I'll take it.
Okay. Stuff and things.
Stuff and things.
The stuff and things log. I registered satlog. .xyz and .org. Satlog.
So you got a bunch of these.
Yeah, well, it's part of that process is like cohering it into something, and then just throw it away. But there's a $13 cost to the coherence. Maybe sometimes it's worth it.
I just love the instinct. Like everybody who's an entrepreneur in tech is just like, oh, I had a new idea and I bought 5 domains for it. It's very funny to me. You're like, what are they? And you're just like, okay.
Yep.
I mean, this is the thing. I made an rlog for it. Because then you can actually explore the thing and start getting down, your mentality around it, and then you could invite other people into what you're exploring. Like this is what I've always wanted with this, rather than like just creating a namespace and then trying to populate the namespace. My practice of that now is like when the thing is like so insistent that it requires a name, then I'll register something. Not before. Because otherwise you're just carrying around a bunch of shit that you're never going to make.
Not me. Definitely not me.
Some of us are more disciplined and perfect in there.
But what if someone takes your idea in the future and then you can never get the name again? This is where my brain goes.
I'm still paranoid that the registrars are like looking for the right balance of, this person has bought domains before. They're looking at them. We're going to snatch it up and resell it to them. I feel like it happens. I can't prove it, but I just can't take the risk.
That's called front running, and Yeah, there's a couple registrars you can use that definitely don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I was going to mention,
Go
John earlier as he was talking was like, go look at Figma and follow me to watch what I'm talking about. If we could screen share for Craig purposes, that would be great.
Craig doesn't record screens, but
Oh, really?
definitely need to figure out a way for Craig to do that. Because yes, that would be, or even have Craig join as a Figma user and just get a native SVG stream.
Okay.
Be nicer, but yeah, unfortunately, yeah, I think it's audio only.
I see.
Yeah.
And then
Craig's our best bet for ease of recording audio. Because
Yeah.
the only other option I think that we've found is OBS, and it's like a whole
It's a process.
It's a nightmare
do.
hellscape.
Yeah, is what I've heard. I haven't gotten into it myself, and I've stayed away for that reason. Because everyone's like,
Yeah,
it's
and then-
rock.
It's basically if you use a Mac, you have to set up a bunch of stuff that breaks your
Yeah.
audio every now and then.
God, yeah, I still have those drivers installed.
Yeah, I think I do on my other computer.
you got to be an AV club nerd,
Yeah,
which means that it's not ready for prime time. I mean,
just
this
need a
is where I
dedicated
would
computer to it.
basically, yeah, like you need a dedicated machine and somebody to run it. uh, yeah, like I think the pipeline of getting this stuff into like an rlog feed too would be nice, because then the stuff is there, you know where it is. It's like, yeah. So, anyways, it's minimum feature set here. Like, okay.
Wait, can I just say one
Yeah.
thing that I remember? I don't know if we already covered this. I might have been kind of in and out. I'm still waking up.
Mhm.
Is one thing I guess like with rlog 2 is thinking about that Discord is nice, but it's not very easy to see. It's not very visible, where rlog hopefully kind of brings some of that thought more into the open. I'm sure this has already been said, but kind of just wanted to reiterate.
Yeah. I mean, it's an accessibility thing. Like, there's also like an aspect of this thing being not a commercial endeavor.
Right.
Changes the way that you think in it. For me, anyway, and I might be oversensitive to, like, I don't know, I'm
Commercial.
having to pay Discord, you know, a bunch of money, and it's like made for gamers and it's made for consumption and all these kinds of things. And like, I miss having like environments that are just that the reason for the environment is to share things in a certain type of way. And if there are commercial interests there, it's just to keep the environment like that.
Yeah.
So, nobody is trying to extract anything from me, and then repurpose it for fucking selling ads or God knows what. But anyway,
Yeah.
it's a yeah. Okay, so all right. Well, we need the ability to spin one of these things up easily. Ideally, like they are fairly cheap in that sense. Like the equivalent that I like right now is like a sort of Google Notebook. You have a surface that is editable and functional and linkable, like at hand, and it's hosted, and you there's like almost no setup for the thing. This is an ideal, obviously, and then you can get to work in the thing pretty quickly. Like you can start building one out. So in that sense, it's like a Figma doc or whatever. So so is there a group surface that can be the case? I think wallet mediated as the sign in. So like how do you start one of these things? Like, oh, we have a bug up our ass. I'm going to start an rlog. All right. So somebody goes and they pop open a thing and they name it or not or whatever that set of things are. Now an rlog instance is available, and how you bring people in is like a sort of one area, a settings area that is like whitelisted wallets. And then if they're on the whitelist, they can publish to the thing. Is this a place to start? I'm just sort of rattling off stuff.
So, I mean, it follows like the user journey pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Got to be able to invite people to use it.
I mean, if we want even really MVP, we could do the model of like obscurity, where it's just a link that has a unique ID that's really hard to guess.
Okay.
Sort of a self-serve onboard yourself flow, which simplifies things somewhat.
Yeah, like just pass the link around to the people that you want to have access to it.
Mm-hmm. So
And we
then,
can always tack
like,
on the actual like allow listing / permissions system after that. Permissions are just kind of annoying and hard and not.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so that's a pain. Yeah. So yes. I guess more what I'm concerned about is like attribution, so that we have that to work with in the interface, like who said what.
Yeah, I
And
think
then-
it's very fair to say everybody who's interacting with it needs to sign in. That as a first principle makes a lot of sense.
I agree with like let's connect wallet and you have an account and all your activity is associated with that account or whatever.
Got it. So I think that's what I'm trying to say versus permissions. We know who is who and how they relate to the system. Okay, cool. Yeah, so now if that's the case, then we know who is who and how they relate to the system. And what do they need to do in the system? Like it is effectively put some text, post a text.
Post a text.
Post a text. So, yeah, text input. And basically that thing creates a text block, and that text block goes into, like, each wallet has a feed, I guess. Maybe I'm...
Might it be accurate to say like each wallet sees a feed relative to itself?
Wallet sees a feed. So say again? Like, how do you mean?
I guess I'm just trying to like keep the data model straight in my head and kind of just saying that nothing is stored. I guess close to the user. It's just that having a particular wallet lets you see a particular set of things. A unique set of things that may or may not be like modified by how many rlogs you're a part of. Don't know if we need to worry about too much that distinction.
Yeah, like so the area that I'm operating on right now is that there is a I guess it's URL bound or whatever. That the URL or that space and these people in that space create an rlog. So like relational rlog. It's relational material in there. So we can talk about the boundary conditions on that stuff or whatever. And that there should be other adjacent ones that have different views. Yeah, and how they relate, I'm not super concerned about yet, because I think that that will become apparent once we have more than one.
So scoping it purely to really just this instance of the rlog and not beyond that.
Yeah, and then we can extrapolate outwards. Like now we need 2, now we need 10, now we need 1,000, whatever. But like, what is the minimum for a single rlog with a group of people? So, so yeah, if you bind your wallet to this thing, you have an input that once you submit the input, it creates a text block that where does the text block go and who sees it and how, I guess, is the next sort of, yeah.
So at least like how this kind of seems to me is like each rlog is effectively like a channel, and
Okay.
as long as you have the channel, you can post to it. And then on the other side of it, you have maybe a user, and the user is just like a stream of all the things that they've posted to any rlogs. I don't know if that
Okay.
makes sense, but like so far, that's how I'm kind of like seeing it in my head. Is like effectively two views.
Okay. So the channel is just the culmination of all user streams.
A channel is the culmination of all user streams in a specific rlog. Yeah. So if there was like this relational.rlog.xyz, it's just all the people who have posted to that in a stream, I suppose. And I guess you could filter it out or whatever if you really wanted to, but like the minimal structure, I think, is just a stream. I don't know if that kind of maps to what you're thinking as well.
To me, it feels like the simplest, obvious structure. Like, like, so we have a web page as a surface, and we have like chronological addition to that surface. So like the structure that makes sense is like, all right, so I as a user come into the system and then put a text block into it, and it appends to the top of a list, like in a Twitter style, effectively. I really want to find something that is not a feed, but I don't know that this is the place to do it. For now, like I think that we move from the feed mentality and get things into a feed, make it feel like that, because we know that information uptake system, people are trained on it at least. So then we can probably find an adjacent something else there.
I think as long as the data structure for the content itself is extensible, like it could be shown in different ways, then that's fine.
Yeah. So the simplest form that doesn't need reinvention is I guess reverse chronological feed. Newest stuff at the top. And then that's like, so rlog, so whatever, I'm just going to use subdomains because they're cleaner, but relational.rlog.xyz / is the all of the it is the universal feed for the rlog in that sense. That's the channel view. And everybody's stuff is just in a big list. I think that, I think that the default view should be your user. Like you just see your stuff. And then you move out laterally into other people's stuff. Like it is effectively your area. Like this is a user distinction that I think is important. But I may be wrong on this one. Then you're just posting to a blog that is effectively yours. And you're less worried about polluting the like master feed or whatever it is, the main channel.
Like you don't feel like you're yelling into a microphone.
Yeah, you're not spamming everybody. You're just writing to yourself, and if people want to see this stuff, they can go look at it. But the feed, the universe, the main timeline is not what's important. It's just another view. So
I'm just wondering how much different Twitter would be if that was the case.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah.
So is that even like completely away from channels? I kind of like just have this frame where it's just like, okay, name.eth is your page, and then there's just date content all the way down, pretty much.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's like one way. I think that you could add the channel on top of it, I guess, if it was there and something like that, but I don't even think that's necessarily necessary. I guess it depends.
So
the simplest version it definitely does not have that.
Okay, so this is and this is scoped to a specific log, like rlog.
It could be, yeah, or it could completely not be either. Either way, I think is fine.
Are we looking as like MVP? We looking to play with the notion of like rlog as a concept, as far as like these little blocks floating around and stuff?
Can you elaborate?
Well, I guess I'm wondering if we should start talking about that side of things as far as getting an MVP. I don't know if you've all done any pre-work on this already. So like, I as a user can just like throw content up there, and then you can like reference that content in some way, and then we figure out how to kind of like organize some of that content.
I mean, I think that can be an expression of what we're headed towards. Yeah, like, is there? Yeah. So how I've been thinking about this, and like, it's just where I'm coming. Like, we're doing another run at this thing from like zero, to see like what is the minimum like instantiation of this thing, so that we can each be putting blocks into a page.
Got it.
Yeah, and then, which I think is it's in alignment with what you just said. So,
and in that case, are we kind of are you expecting we're the only users, or we will at some point soon onboard a couple other people outside of who's in this room right now?
As soon as it makes sense to let other people play with it, by all means.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just thinking like, it again, like really scoping it down, stripping things out. Like we could ignore the channel thing and the it just like the assumption, or we just have our own little hard-coded allow list for our wallets that only allow us to post for now. And so the whole world of rlog is just relational rlog, and then eventually we move our stuff into relational, and then rlog opens up to everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just order of operations here. Like, yeah, I think my instinct is, if we have one of these things like generally working for like, say, relational or whatever, like Kristen and I want one for exquisite land, right? Like, I think that like doing our observational and like our thinking and sharing and stuff within a relational or an exquisite rlog would be a good way to communicate some of the things that we were trying to accomplish in that. And I want that thing yesterday. So
yeah, that feels like a perfect fit.
Cool.
Yeah.
Also, side note, I don't know if this is I keep hearing rlog, but it's like OUR, which is quite wholesome, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there's a nice double meaning there.
Yep.
This is why I was so surprised when that URL was available.
Domain. Yeah,
it's super domain.
I also wonder, Kevin, to your point, like if these individual little messages are unique per wallet, have a date, have basic metadata, then all of the referencing logic, it should be we should be pretty comfortable to add it on top. Like, I mean, I guess I'm wondering if there's any design decisions that need to be made really early on to make sure that that's possible, and if there's something that we're not thinking about here for the remixing element.
Yeah. I guess that's kind of what I was getting at with like MVP, because it seems like this remix element is core to the whole idea and making it work, and that's might have a lot of gotchas as far as like both data model and front end work, and making it like fun and easy to use, and getting to a point where we can start playing with that as soon as possible. Because like the permission stuff, the like filing things into channels or whatever we want to call it, that can kind of be tacked on and is pretty straightforward, like CRUD style web app stuff. Like, I think there's a pretty straight path there, but I'm what I'm getting at, I think, is MVP and is getting to the point of a product that like encapsulates some of the unique features of what we've talked about and get to play with that as soon as possible. I'm assuming in this process there's going to be a couple rounds of like wiping the data because we missed some piece of the data model or whatever.
Yeah. I think that's also why maybe like at least for me, I think the simplest thing is pretty much just taking Chirp City and putting a different UI on top of it. Like effectively, like that's what makes the most sense to me, because at the end of the day, it's just text going into a stream, and then you can filter it, and that's basically already built. And there's no real data model innovation that we have to do, and we can kind of experiment with the form on the UI side, and potentially even with some of the work that you've done with applies and things, something there as well, and that'll help give us a better like understanding of what to do next. And since the data model is so simple, it should be able to like transit to new forms relatively easily. Depending on like how complex we end up making our own things.
Yeah, and back on the point of like maybe there's this drafty stage where it doesn't live on chain and then you mint the thing to like actually solidify it on chain. Right now Chirp City is like very on chain, like everything you do is going to be on chain essentially. Not necessarily the right model for Chirp City or the right model for rlog, but yeah, and then there's a thing that I've been rolling around in my head where Chirp City right now is like plain human readable text, like Markdown is the closest sort of parallel. But this, you could easily write a JSON blob to Chirp City, and there could be front end support for a particular schema of a JSON blob that has additional metadata that maybe you don't want to encapsulate as like a specific kind of event in the smart contract, but you still want to enrich the data in some way with like references or whatever, or structured blocks or something like that. That support, like, because it's just a text string written to a stream, basically, it's like easy to do. You just have to define the schema and have all the clients agree. I don't know where I was going with that, but
well, yeah, it's actually interesting that you say that too, because I think that was generally the model to some degree that we had for honeycombs as well. Like we defined like kind of schema like thing, something like that, where it was like literally JSON.
Right. Yeah, I've been this textile thing that I linked, and just IPFS generally. I've been wanting to play with that a little bit. So if we're not looking to go fully on chain quite yet, or like still need to decide like what lives on chain or doesn't, then might be fun to start there. Textile or IPFS.
Yeah, I'm pretty curious to play with that thing too. It looks very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, like like the felt sense of one of these things is like what I'm pushing into. Like, does it feel like a little text surface that everybody can sort of post to? Yeah, if that's the case, then I think that the felt sense is in the right direction. Like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the best way to not overdo the feeling from the design standpoint, because we did this with the ponder stuff and I over designed everything and it becomes so okay, so where were we at with the simplistic version of this thing? Help me see that in a user interface, because I get lost in the technical stuff a little bit here. So instead of using Chirp City, we're saying like potentially use like build an MVP kind of thing with the textile like structure? Is that one of the options here?
Textile is one of the options. Yeah.
We
Okay.
could also just go, like, if we're looking to just really get a feel for how this all works, go with
Yeah.
like Firebase or something super standard.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we can do that as well.
Yeah,
I mean,
don't know how
personally,
much
like, I'm way more comfortable with working with the blockchain at the moment, where I'm just
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah.
where I'm just like, oh, fuck it, put it on the testnet and it'll be fine. Like,
Yeah,
who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, like that's kind of where I'm at personally.
Yeah, I
Um,
guess with the fact that we can get money from the faucet and the testnet's generally fast enough and permanent enough, yeah, that works for me too.
Cool. I think
Yeah.
that's good too. We're working in the actual material as close as we can. Like every time we do that, we tend to find things better because we're not simulating it, or our simulation is minimal simulation.
Makes sense, yeah. I mean, that was what led to some of the evolution of Chirp City, is like, how much metadata can I pack into this smart contract, and then realizing, like, actually, I shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah,
And
right.
that, so.
Right. And I think that's one of the interesting things. Like, so I feel like, at least for me, the very, very simplest thing, and like, I wonder if it's useful to do this or not, is I mentioned before, is like, I mean, I used to run a website which was like, it just had an app and an API endpoint that just appended text to a file. And then the file was served over HTTP in reverse cron. And like, that's it. It literally was the text file served on the web. That's it. And I think something like that here, at least to me, is like very simple. And then from there, we can kind of branch out and see. And I mean, given the subgraph kind of thing as well, you know, you can have the default view that's just you. But, you know, if I want to go look at Gorham, I can go check out Gorham too. And if you want an image, you can just link out an image if you really felt like it. And so it just remains purely text-based, but it's just super, super simple.
Okay.
And even the UI on that, like, can be like, I don't know, just monospace text.
Yep.
Like, it gives it this kind of like, I don't know, hackery, whatever kind of feel or whatever.
It's pre HTML and CSS.
Right. Which, you know, like, at least as a simple form, it seems fine. Is it like super useful? Maybe not, but I think it'll allow us to like hit the boundaries of the thing pretty fast, which is also kind of good because we'll know what to do next. Or
No,
like
I
what
think
we're
this is
looking
good.
from next.
Like hyper constrain the damn thing. Like if I can't use CSS, then I can't use CSS. That's nice. I like that. Like what can we do with just a text-based interface? You know, we're back to ASCII and stuff like this. I would like to get out of that as quick as possible, but we can feel the extent of what it wants to become. So, and then that's extremely informal. You don't have to worry about style. You don't have to worry about, So then the composability side of things. Yeah. So on the help me with the image part of this. So in the case of so you have a text file, and walk me through the technical part of like serving it on the web, like and then composing these things.
Well, I think composing it maybe doesn't even exist yet.
Okay.
Like, that's why I'm like saying it's really hyper constrained. It's like purely a read only thing. And even the images, like, you would go to Imgur, upload the image and paste the URL to have an image on the thing. And like someone would have to go click that URL. At least the data is there, but maybe it's not that accessible in the moment, but at least it puts the data there itself. At least like that's kind of what I imagine is like really, really hyper constrained, just like text file on the internet. And that's it. And not even dealing with this channel business or anything. Like, there is one single rlog to start. At least that's what I think, is just one single rlog. And like, if you as a user want to say that your text is going a certain direction, you can add some kind of formatting to indicate that. And maybe this like will run us into boundaries, but you know, or like technical problems down the line. But hopefully we can run into them pretty fast. We're like, okay, we need this feature. on top of this structure, and then we can kind of figure out how to work that feature. And then whether we port the data over or not, like, is kind of up to us. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
No, I think it does keep metadata schema stuff as minimal as possible. This really reminds me of the context field in Honeycombs, and
yeah,
I liked it because it was kind of this acceptance that there's lots of things that we want to add, we don't have like the capacity to do right now. So let's just add some like role playing to it. And I wonder how much of that, like, I'm not even sure the context field needs to be a separate field as much as just like more of like an attitude that sometimes you can have a string in your block that's up front that's saying how you wish it were presented or how you wish it could be sort of expressed, and then your actual content. But I feel like keeping in mind with that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we're like doing a pen and paper style version of this thing, and then sure. I mean, so we could sit down and like if the yeah. So what's the interface on this? You drop a text file somewhere.
Not even that. I think maybe just like an input thing on a website.
Got it.
And then I guess from there, at least, like, what comes to mind for my own head is, like, I have a bunch of apps that can write text to things.
Yeah.
So I just have to, put my wallet on that thing and be like, okay, dump this text to blockchain. It will show up.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so is there a list of text blobs per like wallet URL or no?
Yeah, there can be.
Okay.
I think that comes as part of the subgraph effectively. It should be very simple, I think.
Are we just to confirm, we're still like MVP is still like push messages to blockchain and index with subgraph? Or
that's
were
kind
you
of what I was thinking.
Okay, great. There was some chat about like write to a text file, and I just wanted to make sure.
I think
and
that was like CJ's like implementation, right?
And this was my own like personal implementation where I created like a whole database, or like not database structure, like whole schema to basically do what the blockchain does.
I see.
And instead, like, now I'm just saying that thing should exist on the blockchain. It's very simple. It's just text to function, emit that as an event, like literally Chirp City, and then just display it.
Cool.
Like stupid simple.
And when you say the thing you've already done, that was an rlog thing, or just like your own personal like farting around website or whatever?
No, this is my own like farting around website. I built an iOS app. I basically hate notes applications personally. I would just have like these brain farts all the time, and I was like quickly write into the app like, something. Maybe it was like because I was listening to a podcast and it was something that I found interesting in the podcast, and I would just write it into that. I would go to a website on a stream, and that was it. And just like a text file. So this is the same thing to me, at least initially. And I think it can get a lot more complex, and what's more interesting is being able to see like everyone as a group and be able to riff on each other's thoughts. But like the most simple implementation is basically what I had. And then I think that will only take like a few hours realistically to build because it's so simple.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there we can like quickly move on like more complex or interesting things.
Makes sense.
I love.
Yeah, I think we're. What's up?
I loved CJ's stream. I want to see the next evolution of it. Very excited.
Yeah, I think we're at a place where we do like a build together, and then if we have this thing working, and everybody saw, or I mean, we can just barf out one of these things, and then or this thing, and then we'll know. It's the laughably simple thing. I mean, we started the honeycombs thing this way, where like get the build environment set up, like this would help me understand like uh, where and what abstractions are in place and how it works, and then how it spits out to an actual page or whatever, and then that'll help me understand potentially where and how easy it is to take it to places, I guess, from the design standpoint. Yeah.
Also, it's really good as just kind of like a sync. Like how do we like to build with each other? How does it feel?
Yep.
It's like perfect like cupcake of a thing to make before we baking a whole factory of things.
Yep. Yeah, we record it. That's part of the documentation.
Did I hear that CJ is being volunteered to bootstrap the project?
Oh, fuck yeah.
One of the exercises I wanted to get out of Chirp City was actually making like a nice scaffold for myself. So, if you give me some time, I can turn that into a scaffold with like monorepo plus contracts plus subgraph plus whatever.
Sure. Yeah, if you want me to help out with that, or you want to do it yourself and we can wait for that, I'm down for either.
Cool. Yeah, I'd be curious to like, I'm gonna rip out a bunch of Chirp City stuff and start with the like clean slate where that repo is currently, and then I'll hand that to you, and then you can fire it up and see if it needs, as a new user of it, if it needs improvements at all.
Cool. Yeah, just like a basic sanity check on it, essentially.
Yeah.
Totally.
First user.
Yeah, I can totally do that. I like, at least looking at the Chirp City stuff, I'm assuming that this will come together in like, especially with a starter repo, in like the span of 30 minutes.
Yep.
Fun.
Especially since I don't have to do HTML or CSS. I guess my website is down, but the Internet Archive picked it up from like a year ago or 2 years ago. So it's like literally just monospaced font. Like I'm gonna copy this.
Perfect. I think this is good. Like it's down in the basement of what you don't need to know much. Just how to make text go on a thing. I think this is good. This is a good place to start. It's low abstraction.
Yeah, there's I don't know. I love the stupid simplicity of things sometimes.
Yeah.
Literally that. Oh god.
Right? I mean, that looks like my first webpage.
Totally.
Just that and a DHTML cursor trailer.
Sparkly cursor.
Add some tables in there. We're good to go.
I've been thinking about the fact that I'm paying Discord $5 a month just for emoji is a little ridiculous, but how there's this weird kind of norm around monetizing a thing with Flare.
Yeah.
And so like I was just thinking that this is far future and stuff, but if we needed funding in some way, like selling subdomains as like you get a URL with like a crappy thing, but then you could upgrade to a subdomain if you want. Or like you get emoji or reactions or something like silly like that.
Yep. I mean, this is all of this stuff I've been. I have to get all that shit out of the way so that the thing can actually be useful. But yeah, like one of the things, like I want to create like a brand, like just a list of all the big brands or whatever, and like that namespace is like way more expensive for like subdomains or whatever on the rlogs, something like this, and so they could underwrite development if fucking Bud Light wants to come along and get budlight.rlog. That's great.
Totally.
And you offer it as an NFT or something like this. Anyways, there's all kinds of things in there, but part of the thing that I think makes aside from that stupid shit, the like pulling from the Tumblr era, like dress up your blog, like just having like simple CSS or something like this that generally people could hack on and like make these things feel like a home. Yeah, I would love if that was the case here.
Yep.
And also emojis for $5 a month.
I still haven't done that. It comes up every now and then. Like the last time it came up was like 2 weeks ago while we were playing disc golf. How does
Yeah.
why do discs initially turn to the right and then turn to the left if it's like an understable disc? And I'm like, I'd love to model a disc with computational fluid dynamics to see this. That would be really cool.
Heiser and Anheuser.
Yeah.
We should go disc golfing sometime soon.
Oh fuck yeah, I'm down. I'm really terrible. I only got into it like this past year or so, but it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. I grew up with some folks that used to play regularly, and now now one of those guys kind of competes. Our most fun disc golf thing was he was living in or around Denver, and a buddy of mine and I, we were all high school friends, went out to visit him to play some disc golf and hang out and taste beer and stuff. And there's a disc golf course that he brought us to as like a surprise that you can rent a goat as a caddy.
What?
So it had like disc bags on its back and like a little treat bag and like a leash, and we just kind of like brought it around with us as our caddy.
That is hilarious.
It was awesome.
That's
a true utopia.
Yep.
I want a goat caddy.
Goat caddy. That's great. Yeah, we met a guy at a hostel who was who came up in Austin in the scene or whatever, and was like a professional player or whatever.
Oh shit.
Yeah, he was a nutcase. And the whole time, like in the sort of common room, there's like a TV, and he would just like beam disc golf to it all day. And then anybody who was walking by is like, yeah, you see this shot? This is how this works. So it was nice. I got to learn a lot about everything. He was an evangelist.
He teach you fluid dynamics?
What's that?
Did he teach you fluid dynamics?
He did. He taught me the way of fluid. I mean, fluid dynamics and currency, there's a bunch of related stuff going on there. Money flows. There you go. Very gross.
Gross.
I regretted that as soon as I hit enter.
Slurp. All right. Yeah, I'm starting to fade here. So we're basically at we just need to do a jam and then like see what comes of it. Like that's where we're at, kind of thing. Get a text-based. Okay, cool. I like the direction here. It feels fun.
Dave, this is going to be putting text box on a page all over again. That's going to be the whole app this time.
That's the name of the recording. It's like a text box on a page again.
Well, we're taking another run at it. This time we won't overcomplicate it.
Yeah, not try to make it into something before it exists, I guess.
I mean, this is like pre my ability. Like getting down into the guts of the thing is like, I want to dress it all up. So it's good constraints, and then I can learn. We can build it up from that. And I think if the foundation is good and simple, like it's a simple system, then we've done something. Plus, I think it like aligns with the informality thing. It's great.
On prettying it up front. Dave, have you played with Tailwind much?
No, I need to though. So I think this might be a good.
Great.
I mean, we talked about it a little bit, and like, yeah, I've always resisted all the frameworks because I want to paint everything manually. But that resistance has come to an end. So it might be good to do it with this.
Well, I'm like a huge convert. Like,
Nice.
I don't ever want to have to write CSS by hand again, sort of thing.
Gotcha.
So I'm happy to hold your hand on that.
That'd be great. I'm ready.
It's so great once you get into it and start playing around. It's a little there's a little bit of friction ahead of things because it's got like a naming system that you have to get used to and have docs open all the time. But yeah, I like the constraints that it provides.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, if it gets more things out the door that are legible to more people, then great.
Yeah, I find it does, at least for me. Speeds me up a lot. I spend less time on the nitty-gritty, like, pixel perfect details and more time on the, like, large strokes and medium strokes.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, I mean, this is the thing. If these things, like, come out the box with, like, the ability to manage a sort of system, yeah, I don't know. It'll be fun. I think that stuff will be good.
Cool.
Good. Your website's like
Tailwind?
hilarious. Yeah, just like playing with it, it's just really excellently designed. I don't know if this is what it feels like to use the thing, but looking at it, I'm like, this looks really nice to use.
They are the super web makers.
So, Kristen, there's a bunch of great extensions that have brain farts available.
Oh yeah.
Brainfarts.delivery.
Delivery.
Brainfarts.casino.
There you go.
Delivery good part.
Delivery is really good.
Yeah.
That's a crazy top level domain.
Brainfarts.fashion.
Ooh. Breakfast arts.
.ai.
That's the one that I saw too.
We've trained our artificial intelligence with the latest community-generated brain parts.
That's interesting that gay is a top level domain.
Yeah.
Brainfarts.mom. XXX and that sexy were just made CLDs. That's part of that.
Which one?
XXX and sexy and a couple others. Bunch of, like, I think ICANN is finally starting to wake up and just like be a little more, we're a little less like a calcified institution. But we'll see.
What's his face? Robin Sloan just got this website URL. Looking up, but he was like really, really pleased with it. And he also had, what's his olive oil company? I forget what it's called. Liquid Gold. It's some, I don't know. It's
Fat
really good.
Gold.
He's like, what is it? Oh, Fat Gold. And he's like, that one's really good. He's like, but look at this one. And I'm like, sure. I didn't know. Oh. I don't love him many O's. Like, what? Ooh.
Just kind of ghostly.
Brain farts today is also nice.
There's brain fart supply. Sorry, going down this list is way too fun.
Brain farts bar. Brain farts beer.
Brain fart solutions. Oh my god, that's great.
Brain farts bingo. This always happens.
Studio name.
Spend a bit of time doing this. Brain farts career.
I recently registered this one, so I can do something like that.
Dot.
That hurts my brain a little bit.
Click, at, dot, click.
So
Jesus.
it's just
Yeah, that's fucked up.
art to frustrate people.
I guess you can give that one to scammers.
Brain Farts International. That's really good.
Oh no. I wanted to. Flash is no longer supported. I don't know if you ever saw this. It's like the most frustrating interface ever made.
Is it the thing that
man.
like the buttons escape your cursor?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I want it. I want to see.
Brain fart stop production. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
This is too good.
Like I'm just imagining reading that email over the phone to somebody in the customer service department. I think I'd just give up.
Yeah.
I would never get an email.
It's the perfect.
World's most lonely email. All right.
When
Do
do
we
we
want
wanna-
to schedule? Yeah, that's where we're at.
Mhm.
So Monday.
Wow.
10 years. Interesting. Someone just registered Hexagon NFT. I wonder if that has to do with the Twitter thing.
Could be. I don't know.
week.
I'm down whenever.
Next week or tomorrow?
I can't do tomorrow.
Yeah, I can't really.
Next week.
know.
Next week.
Next week.
Monday.
Sure.
Pretty free whenever. We have a squawk scheduled for 2:30 Central on Monday. We can either do it right after that, combine them, play some.
Probably combine them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not generally not like
Oh yeah, that's right.
until 2 Pacific or so.
Okay.
Do you want to move the squawk back? Or
Yeah,
just do the rlog stuff
Is that
like on like 2:30 or 3 or something?
I feel like if we have the squawk, it's going to turn into rlog very, very quickly.
Yeah. Might as well just
Probably.
repurpose that, move it later.
Yeah.
do we want
So-
to? Are people cool with moving the squawk for now anyway? So Kevin can show up more often.
Sure.
That's fine.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah. I'm in the middle of migrating over to relational.eth Google Calendar. We'll see.
We'll see.
Well, I'm
You just need
like
to build a
got
calendar
one
system.
foot in each door, and it's starting to drive me crazy.
Oh yeah.
Which is good. I'm
Ooh.
feeling the pain of it. Well, part of what happened was I was trying to sync my Apple Calendar to the Google Calendar, and for some reason it's broken. Like it's not working. I just restarted my computer though. Maybe it works now. Because I wanted to feel like the pain points. And I'm like, well, here's one. You can't sync. So if you wanted to use iCal, it just doesn't. You can't type in the Google Calendar. It's just annoying.
Yeah, it's super weird. Like it worked for a little bit and then it stopped working and I was like, oh god, what happened?
Yep. Add account.
Well, rlog will have its own calendar.
Interesting. Yeah, it doesn't.
structure.
It's just frozen. That's frustrating when something simple like that doesn't work, and then feeling like, who am I going to contact? Apple? No.
You could try.
Yeah, you could.
They'd be
try.
like, fuck you, we all your data out, so it's more secure this way.
Do you want me to put in a good word with my cousin? Tim Cook.
Yeah, your cousin.
Mm.
Tim Cook is my cousin.
Mm-hmm.
He's what is it? My fourth cousin.
Cousin's a cousin.
Yep. My grandmother used to look after him in Alabama. Meaning he'll probably fix the calendar for me, is what I'm saying. Yo, Timmy boy.
Oh, ancestry charts are weird.
Uh-huh.
Street charts are cool though. All right, Kevin, I'm gonna share this calendar with you, and I'm actually gonna open this all up.
Stuff to do. It's just an infinite list.
Mm-hmm. The perfect data structure.
Stuff and things. It does map pretty well to URLs.
Right? Here are my things. You want to look at my stuff?
Oh my God.
When this thing is, I'm going to
He's
market
on a
it like
rampage.
this. You're going to see, and people are going to fucking love it.
Put your stuff and things in the thing and stuff
Mhm.
box.
Do you need a place for your stuff with other people? Do you like to post things? rlog is for you. We support all of these things.
Oh my
Actually, let
God.
me take a picture of my. Mm-hmm.
Dave, if for relational, what email address would I use?
Calculator works.
All right, full access. I'm gonna stick Cal.
It doesn't let you do that either? Oh my gosh.
It's doing something weird. So if you do add account, because it's a new Google account, and you click Google, it just opens this little box with the little, whatever those little wheels are that tell you it's thinking. And it'll just go forever.
The beach ball.
It's rude. This one's not even a beach ball. It's boring. It's just grayscale.
Out of curiosity, which URL are you trying to add into the Apple Calendar? I remember Google gives you a few different ones. And
I'm not adding a URL. I'm adding an account. So like I've got a few different email accounts where on like the left hand side of the calendar it says like kristen.pavley@gmail.com. So I'm trying to
got it.
like pipe in relational.eth@gmail.com now. But no.
Got it. Yeah. Is there a 2FA on relational.eth@gmail?
Is there what?
Two-factor authentication.
Probably not.
Possible. They require you to use like an app password instead of a traditional flow. And I think now they have a weird thing where you can actually put in your password, or Kindle does this. You can put in your password and your 2FA code after the password in the password field, and they actually unpack them on their side and validate it. I was shook, but that's the issue.
Two-step verification. Yeah, all of this stuff is so designed for single player use. Like, it should be that anybody who's like an owner of the or manager can add their own two-step verification, but nope.
Dave, I like with your sketch the consume metaphors: feed, graze, snack, and die. Very interesting.
Got to find some new. It's somewhere in there.
Where are you looking?
On the notepad
Oh yeah.
thing I shared.
Consume metaphor, feed, graze, feast.
Feast upon my knowledge.
We are offering you a feast.
A bounty.
Get your shit together, Summer. All together. Backpack. All your shit.
It's like one of my favorite scenes in Rick and Morty.
Love Rick and Morty. John, I think you might have added a calendar item for your own personal thing to Buzzard just in case on February 3rd at 9 a.m. Or is that something else we talked about that I missed?
February 3rd. That's very possible. I miss
Just so you don't
all the time.
Yeah, lose track of it.
Oh, yep. That would be it. Thank you.
And your trek is also in here too, which I assumed means you're out of pocket.
Oh,
then.
yeah. Yeah, that was actually for my personal calendar, but I'll make sure to add one for
Yeah,
as well.
I figured, but then we had also been talking about it, and I was like,
Yeah.
if you would use
Oh, God,
like the vague language like that.
The default calendar settings versus Mac versus iPhone, like where events go when you talk to Siri, it's just so opaque and like confusing and yeesh.
So I set up the two-factor authentication, and it's allowing me to open it now.
Oh, adding.
I was like, why not? I'll try that.
Oh, wow.
That doesn't surprise me in some ways. Like Apple's like, it has to be super secure before we'll enter.
Yeah.
That's weird though. Like, how would you know that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Where Dave's like,
very
well, if you knew how computers worked, and then I'd be like, oh, but I don't. Keep trying. All right. Cool. Maybe cool. So good. All right, I am removing the old Apple Cal. I think I can get rid of the Buzzard group on Apple Cal. Hmm. Are you guys showing? Can you look at your calendar real quick for Tuesday the 25th? This is a test calendar item showing up for people wherever you calendar.
January?
The 2 p.m.
On the
The green one.
25th, it says test relational.
Oh yeah, I see it.
Okay, cool.
I'm not seeing it on my default calendar setup right now, but that's, I think, because you removed the. Wait, should I expect to see it? And via which calendar?
I think so. So what I did was, this is the relational.eth Google Calendar,
Mm-hmm.
which I invited you to, so you should have access to, which if you're using iCal,
Yes.
I don't know.
I guess that's our source of truth now, right? Just that.
Yeah, I'm trying to
That
move
URL.
over to that. Yep.
Perfect. Good.
Because then
Sure.
more people, because it's more extensible to both Google and Apple.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh man,
Yeah,
am I the only Google Calendar user?
No, Kevin is too. So I'm going to get rid of Buzzard in the Apple calendar. Delete. There goes nothing. Delete and don't notify. Sneaky.
Yep.
There it
That's
goes.
good for mine as well.
So I added the relational to my Google Calendar. Do you know if that automatically shows up in my iCal, or is that a thing that I have to configure to show up?
I think you have to configure, and because you're on the account, I believe what you need to do for iCal is open the calendar app and then add account. Yeah.
Oh no, there it goes. It just showed up
It showed up? Okay, good.
via my personal account. Yeah. Great.
Cool.
I can see Buzzard Squawk on the 24th at 2 p.m.
Perfect. And then that should, yep, it's on there for foreseeable future.
Okay, so it's being piped through. Okay. Oh, here.
Oops. I need to change that one.
Cool.
Many thanks, Kristen, for wrangling with us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't really know.
Thank
I'm
you.
like not able to map in my head what's happening anymore. I like lost the thread on it, and I'm like, I did something. Yeah. One of these days we'll figure out how to integrate. There needs to be like a central calendar integrator thing.
Just trying to centralize the web.
Well, you need centralization for at
The
certain
enemy.
stages. Like one of the things that
Yeah.
like you need it to be distributed, but then in order to like view it and work with it, you need to centralize. Like there's this weird movement, like distribute and then centralize, distribute, centralize. There's like a similar thing with like the layers of trust and that kind of thing too, that with those layers of trust you would have more access to being able to edit and move around calendar items too.
Yeah.
I think. And then there should be ways of creating like within the Buzzard or relational calendar, different projects could be branded in different ways. Like that would be really nice.
Yeah. It's a whole layer of communications that the calendaring system doesn't seem to take into account.
No, it doesn't care.
Nope. Okay, so we're doing 4
Yep.
on Monday. Got
Yep.
it. Cool. I don't know. I think we made some progress here. We got a glimmer of a direction. It's nice. Sweet.
Sweet.
All right, I'm gonna go chew on food I can't taste. It's like not being able to see color. It's fucked up.
Yeah.
Really weird because Dave
I guess-
doesn't really care about food.
Mm-hmm.
I do now.
So this is like even less.
Really,
You gotta take it away. Because you could take the chance to be like eating the most healthy, the most like undesirable but good for you foods possible.
I think, Kristen, you're talking, but I can't hear you.
No.
I can hear her in the other room.
Yeah, I can hear it.
She's talking to herself.
Computer guide.
sorry.
There goes. Oh, you're back.
You're back.
I'm back. I'm just lamenting Dave, lamenting.
Reasonable. Yeah, I don't know. Just being sick, you can't go anywhere. You can't do it. And like, at least eating is like entertainment. It can be. Enjoy some textures, some flavors. Yeah, or now everything is a texture, and it's like I don't know. It's horrifying in a way.
I can imagine. It seems really weird.
It is. Kristen found it fascinating. I find it, I don't know, muting.
You have
It's like being mouth depressed.
Well, I think it's interesting because there's still a way, like texture and like the composition together. When you can't taste them, you still feel like when it's good. Like if you did something or ate something and it was rotten somehow, you don't need to know that. Like there's a chemical composition of like when things come together. So I think there's a felt sense. It doesn't have to be the actual taste or smell of it. Which, I mean, that's cool.
Well, you're advanced. I'm unadvanced. Here we are. All right, cool. Well, I'm gonna go do that. Thanks, everybody. This is fun.
Likewise.
All right.
Cool.
Yep.
See you later.
Later.
To go, Craig.
Go, Craig. Go.
Go.
Bye-bye.
Bye.